we purchased this property, Belinda, in '89, and it was a sheep and wheat operation. About a third of the land was used for growing wheat, and sheep were grazed on the rest, and shearing approximately 12,000 sheep. We, as the 90s progressed, we swung it over to 2/3 cropping and 1/3 sheep, and in that process, so they were reasonably good wet sort of years, and we decided I should say before we get too far into this, our soil type is a heavy clay, some sandy loam, but mainly heavy clay soils, and we found that the sheep were compacting the clay quite badly, and the more we looked, the more we decided that probably historically, certainly well before our time, but we weren't helping. The sheep were definitely impacting. So with that, we started locking up country, and this country behind us, to the right, is a country we stopped running sheep in the very early 90s. We just stopped grazing it with sheep because it was getting quite compacted, and then we had the problem, well, what are we going to use the country for, because it was quite a lot of country. So we purchased a small mob of cattle, and we discovered that the cattle did particularly well on it. So that sort of just progressed. That was a fairly small number. Then of course we got a bit carried away, and we got more and more and more, and at the point we started this program, there was none of the salt bushes you see it, or the blue bushes you see it now, or very not apparent anyway. I suspect the sheep were eating it off, and we sort of really weren't even aware of it. But the cattle, we've discovered where the cattle, because we were running cattle in this country over the winter, where they were taking little pug marks. Each one of the little pug marks grew a blue bush, and for the next 2 or 3 years we had this explosion of blue bush, and we sort of had to scratch our head and wonder what to do with it, because most people would realise that stock don't do that well on pure blue bush or salt bush. They need something else. So the sort of long story short, while we were sort of contemplating all that, with our farming operation, which is this is one of the paddocks here, we had wheat growing in it, and at that point after harvest we would have cattle just grazing the stubbles, and after a little while we discovered that the cattle would try to escape on a perfectly good strong stubble, and we sort of wondering what was going on, and then we cottoned on to the fact that along the fence lines, where there was blue bush, they were grazing the blue bush, and as soon as they finished the blue bush, just regardless of what else was in the paddock, they wanted to escape, and we're giving our fences a hard time. So we sort of thought, gosh, anyway, so we opened the gate, of course. It was a pretty clever thing to do, since they'd already knocked the fence down anyway. But we discovered then that they did exceptionally well on just grazing on this blue bush country. Then they'd wander back and have a bit of stubble, and we were getting far greater use of the stubbles and use of this blue bush country. So it sort of all worked out pretty well for us, and we've had very happy, healthy cows, and we never had to supplementary feed them. We never have really, or you should never say never. At one stage in the drought we did feed a small number of heifers, but our cows have never been supplementary fed, and so that system worked quite well for us. and still does. Camera's probably not good enough to show it, but you know, we've got, at the moment, we've got cattle grazing on what was a crop last year, and we've got some green grass coming up through it, and if it rains, hopefully we'll get a lot more. But at the moment, the cows have all got calves on them, and they're doing quite well. But we've opened the gate up. We've allowed them to access the blue bush. The minute the winter gets truly cranked up, we will lock the gate and just keep them on the grass, and the blue bush will pick up, and later on, you know, the cycle can start again.